Welcome back to the channel, everyone, where we love talking about movies and more. I'm your host, Mason Phillips, and today actually starts a new series I'm doing here on the channel. Don't really have a name for it yet. I'm sure we'll come up with something before this video comes out. But this video is really just me sitting down and talking with all you guys, where it's just a one-on-one, me and you talking, and whatever subject I just kind of want to think about bringing up. It's not a movie review that I'm doing here. I'm not doing any kind of long-form featured editorial like my Marvel restructuring series that I've started on the channel. Hope you're enjoying that. Phase 1 is up on the channel right now. I'll be doing a video for Phase 2 very soon. But this is really just a sit down, a one-on-one with me and you, and just talking about what I love to talk about. And with this, I want you to jump down into the comment section and discuss this topic with me. I hope that we have a good discussion, fun discussion. That's what we're here to do, is to have fun, talk about movies and TV and entertainment, just the stuff that we like to talk about, movies and more. So before we get any further in this video, I want to ask you guys to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified when new videos go live to this channel. When you do that, it always helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. So what I want to talk about is the DC Universe, James Gunn's DCU. At the start of the year, I did a state of the MCU. That's not really what this is. It kind of is, but it's really just talking about everything that DC's done up to this point, what we've got coming in the future, kind of what I hope from DC from the next couple of years as well. So I think the appropriate thing to do is to go back to the early stages of the DCU, and it kind of starts with the Suicide Squad. Now, that movie was kind of a reboot of the Suicide Squad franchise, was both a sequel to the 2016 movie directed by David Ayer. It was definitely firmly set within the DC extended universe. You had carryovers, you had Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, Jai Courtney back as Captain Boomerang, you had Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, so you had these carryovers from the previous iteration of Suicide Squad. This time it was interjected with that James Gunn fun that you got from Guardians of the Galaxy, but this time just kind of left unhinged. It was rated R. It was the first R-rated project of the DC extended universe. I'm not counting the Ultimate Edition for Batman vs. Superman, but it was really his first foray into DC. Kind of came out of a weird situation where we had firing of James Gunn over at Marvel Studios. Originally, he was let go over some past tweets, some past comments that he made online. So he was fired from his position as director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 at the time, was not set to return as director of that. And so now as a free agent, all the studios were lining up to pick up James Gunn, and it was Warner Brothers who had the best, most appealing opportunity for him. Said, you can basically do anything you want. They even said at the time, you can even do a Superman movie if that's what you want. And it was the Suicide Squad that James Gunn wanted to tackle first. And it's the perfect project for James Gunn. What you expect, what he did with the Guardians of the Galaxy series, this team of outcasts. And this team with the Suicide Squad are even more outcasts than what the Guardians of the Galaxy were. Just straight up villains, complete losers, people who had nothing to offer society. He creates this team of the Suicide Squad and brings heart to characters like Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher 2, characters that on the surface level shouldn't work. And of course, here comes James Gunn interjecting his magic into characters that are C-list, D-list level characters that only major comic book fans would know about. And he brings them into the public eye, makes them public figures because the writing was well done, because the movie was well directed, well crafted, and it's what he does. It's the magic of James Gunn. He's able to bring together characters that nobody cared about and makes you care about them. I mean, Polka Dot Man. Who would have thought that would have been one of our favorite characters to come out of the Suicide Squad? It's with this film that it gave James Gunn the opportunity to take some of these lesser known characters and really prop them up and make them fan favorites. And so out of the Suicide Squad, it was already planned that after this movie, they were setting up a continuation series in Peacemaker. And Peacemaker is the second part of this pre-DCU, still in the DCEU, but is going to be another one of these projects that is carried over into the new DC universe. So then we get Peacemaker, a character that nobody knew before the Suicide Squad, but because of what James Gunn did, the performance from John Cena brought this character to life, and another character that shouldn't work, a show that shouldn't work. But with Peacemaker, it was fun, it was irreverent, it was wildly entertaining. A character that shouldn't work, but it's Gunn, it's John Cena, it's the ensemble cast, the whole team that brought this show together became wildly successful overnight and became the most successful original series on HBO Max before it was retitled to Max and then was renamed HBO Max once again. Naming aside with the streaming service, this series was another critical success, fan success. So DC knew they had something special with James Gunn. However, the DC Extended Universe was kind of in a rocky territory. Ever since the fumbling they did with the Justice League, the early days of the DCEU just never took off. And while there were some fun projects in there, and some projects that I really enjoy and really love, such as Man of Steel, or Zack Snyder's Justice League, or that first Wonder Woman movie, I love many of the projects that came out of the DCEU. But unfortunately, the whole franchise was just a muddled mess. Never knew what direction it wanted to go in, never really had a solid plan. Anytime they did get a plan, they would make a mistake, and then the whole studio would get gun shy. Warner Brothers would come in, change the structure overnight, and so we never knew what direction the DCEU was going to go in. We had actors sign up for roles and then leave projects later. So you had actors such as Henry Cavill as Superman or Ben Affleck as Batman, when we never knew from one day to the next, are they going to keep playing these characters, or are they going to recast these characters? Oh wait, no, they're going to keep playing these characters. Oh no, they're going to recast these characters. It was just a lot of back and forth. We never knew what to get excited about, and that's what ultimately killed the DC Extended Universe. Yes, it was the quality of some of these projects, but it was the lack of direction that ultimately did the DCEU in. So with the DCU, there was an opportunity to create something fun, exciting, with a clear and strong direction, but to have that, you needed a true visionary behind everything to spearhead the direction of the DC Universe. Over at Marvel, they have Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios, who's been spearheading and shepherding everything since the beginning. Yeah, it wasn't completely on him with Iron Man, but he was there since the beginning, shaping this, structuring this, had experience on other films before he took on that role as president, and then he knew the good and the bad of what to do and what not to do when it came to superhero filmmaking. And so that's why the MCU had such great successes with Kevin Feige's direction, his confidence in the direction to take the studio in, sometimes pivot when things don't work the way he thought it was going to. And it's with those pivots and those clear directions the MCU had such great success. And so DC really needed somebody like that. They kept trying to prop people up like that with the DCEU. Jeff Johns at one point was put in charge. Walter Hamada was put in charge. There were multiple people vying for leadership. Dwayne Johnson even at one point tried to take over leadership of the DCEU with the introduction of Black Adam and everything he was trying to do out of that film, even bringing back Henry Cavill in the role of Superman. And unfortunately, the hierarchy of power just it didn't change the way he thought it was going to. But the hierarchy of power did change, just not with the leadership of Dwayne Johnson. It did change with the leadership of James Gunn. Came in as the president, the co-CEO of the newly formed DC Studios. Had James Gunn as the creative head, the creative force behind everything. Peter Safran comes in as the business lead to spearhead the financials, the business side of the entire series, the entire studio. With these two leading the charge from the forefront, from the start, we've got a clear direction now. We have somebody who has a true vision for where to take the DC universe, and a choice. I didn't see James Gunn as somebody who was going to do this. You know, he's a filmmaker. He likes to make movies, direct movies. I didn't see him as somebody who's going to take over leadership of an entire studio, but after seeing him run the studio for the last couple of years, it totally makes sense why he took this job on, why he wanted to do this, and why he agreed that the only way he was going to do this is that the business aspects of the whole structure of the studio was left to Peter Safran. He was able to lead the creative force, the creative direction of the studio. It's the best way. I think that was the smartest move to create the structure, to lead it like this. I think for the most part, the beginning of the DC universe has actually been quite successful under James Gunn's direction. So you had the carryover, you had the Suicide Squad, you have Peacemaker Season 1, and you even have Blue Beetle, the Blue Beetle film that came out at the end of the DCEU's run in 2023. It's still to be seen where Blue Beetle will come back into the DCU. There's supposed to be an animated series on the way. Joel Manganiello still playing the character of Blue Beetle, I believe voicing him this time around, and I'm sure we'll see him again in live action at some point in the future. And then of course we have carryovers like John Cena's Peacemaker. He's still in the DC universe. We have Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, still in the DC universe. You have these elements that are carried over from what James Gunn did, and he's just restructuring it, reshaping it a little bit. You kind of saw where a lot of that restructuring came from in the previously on segment in Peacemaker Season 2. The majority of Peacemaker Season 1 and the majority of the Suicide Squad film are canon, but slight things changed. The Justice League showing up at the end of Peacemaker Season 1 for one changed to the Justice Gang that was introduced in Superman coming in instead. So you have little changes like that, but for the most part, those projects are kind of the early beginnings of the DCU before we got the official beginning with Creature Commandos in 2024, and then leading into the first official DC film with Superman last year. And these projects have varying degrees of success, and for the most part, I've quite enjoyed them. I thought Creature Commandos was fun, it was chaotic, it had that, very James Gunn creative force behind it. Felt like the Suicide Squad, it felt like Peacemaker, had the same creative touch points that from a James Gunn project. The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, all of these were very clearly shepherded and created by him. It has that flavor, that James Gunn flavor all over the place. And again, goes into this very hard R. It's kind of funny how the early stages of the DCU all start with this very hard R, edgy adult material with the Suicide Squad, with Peacemaker, with Creature Commandos. And it's not until Superman that we get this more family-friendly aspect. The younger audience can kind of be introduced and come into the DC universe finally with Superman. And what I also love about the early stages of the DC universe, I wouldn't have necessarily picked up on some threads left over from the DCEU. I would have done a full reboot and completely recast any characters that were cast in the previous DC universe. I wouldn't have carried over with the Suicide Squad with Peacemaker. James Gunn recently said that some of that is due to some contracts they already signed with the actors from Peacemaker Season 1, and so when Season 2 came around, it was easier to just make the series rather than go into a lot of legal issues and legal battles over actors' contracts. And so I can see on that reason alone why those things carried over, but they were also the James Gunn project. So of course he's going to bring over the stuff that he already did. He's going to pull those over into the DC universe and pretty much leave anything else that he didn't touch. That's going to be rebooted from the ground up. It's going to be restarted, restructured. We're going to kind of ignore anything else that wasn't created specifically by Gunn. But with this early stage of the DC universe, what I really enjoyed about this was that it's a lived-in world. And there's already this history of the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age of comics. There's these heroes and these villains, these characters that have already existed throughout time. You have characters like Wildcat Grant, who existed in the DC universe. You have these other heroes like Max Mercury, who existed in the DC universe prior to the start of the DCU. It's not like the MCU, where when Iron Man came out, other characters would have existed, like Captain America was already part of the history of the MCU. But there weren't many heroes that came about before Iron Man. Most of it was set up after that film. And in the case of the DCEU, it's the same thing. You have other characters that, in hindsight, we know that other characters like Batman existed in the DCEU, but most were introduced after the events of Man of Steel. But with the DCU, there's a lot of characters and a lot of properties that were already established in this universe. So it feels lived in. It doesn't feel like we are just now starting with this. We're not getting the origin story for all these characters at the very beginning. And that's what I really appreciated about this early stage of the DC universe, is that it feels lived in. We have these established heroes. We have this established lore that's already in place before we got to Creature Commandos, before we got to Superman. And so that's been so interesting. And I know they're going to be able to do a lot with that as we go into further projects, more projects. There's going to be characters that are already going to have established backstories, or we're going to get origin story set all over the place in different times in the DC universe. And I think that's going to be a lot more fun and a lot more entertaining than the streamlined introduction of a lot of the characters that we got in the MCU. So it really makes this clear distinction of, rather than starting the universe from scratch and having this really like baby universe that hasn't matured yet, the DCU is a matured comics universe. And that's so fun to me. It's different. And it feels like comics. That's the way comics are. Sometimes you just step in as a new reader to a universe that's already been established. And that's kind of what they're doing here with the DC universe, what James Gunn's doing here with the DCU. So I really like that. I like that the first Superman movie he's already had the origin story, but he's not a veteran Superman, so he's still early enough in his career that we can still step into this part of the story and feel like we're still at the beginning stages of the story. Maybe not at the very beginning, but we're still early on. So that's been so fun to experience with these characters. And so yeah, the DCU has been, it's had an interesting start, kind of birthed out of the failures of the DCEU. Carryover projects like the Suicide Squad, like Peacemaker, and Peacemaker even gets season 2. And then in that second season, you see the effects of it switching from DCEU to DCU. We'll see that again with whatever they decide to do with Blue Beetle going forward. If there's a lot of carryover from that film, or if it's just the actor alone and they completely change his backstory. We'll find out when we get to the next Blue Beetle story. And then we had Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos really felt like a carryover, even though it was first introduced and was the first true project of the DCU. Felt like this carryover from the previous DCEU, and it feels like it could have lived in the DCEU and probably was going to, because I think this was a project that Gunn was already working on before he was even president, before he was running DC Studios. So that's kind of a weird carryover, because there's some characters with Amanda Waller. You have Rick Flag Sr., who's the father of Rick Flag Jr., who was played by Joel Kinnaman in those 2 Suicide Squad films, one that wasn't Gunn's and then one that was a James Gunn property. So the Creature Commandos feels like this weird carryover, but was a nice start to the DCU, again feeling like this lived-in, pre-existing universe. That's been pretty fun to experience. Creature Commandos isn't one of my favorite projects from Gunn that I've seen, but I did enjoy it overall. I have some issues with it. I wouldn't have gone as like hard and edgy as Gunn did maybe, but I did enjoy it at the end of the day. So I'm looking forward to seeing where the rest of the story may go with season 2. And then of course we got Superman last year, and I really enjoyed what that film did. Again, establishing the universe, having these other touchstones, these other characters. The Green Lantern Corps has already been established with Guy Gardner. We have Hawkgirl. We have Mr. Terrific. We have these other supporting characters on the outside. We have the relationship between Clark and Lois has already been established. She knows that he's Superman, that Clark Kent is Superman. So there's this backstory, this history that's already been established and created. That's been so fun to experience and watch. Just discovering all the little Easter eggs that have been set up in the DC universe. Again, I love the lived-in world that we get with this new DC universe. It doesn't feel so new. It doesn't feel so shiny. It feels like there's a history, and I'm just loving unpacking every little bit, every little morsel we have of this new DC universe. It's exciting. It's interesting, and that's something that the DC universe also really needed. The DCEU, again, just the change it had, just constant changes it had in leadership and direction, not knowing if they were going to, at the end of The Flash, go with Michael Keaton and then have him continue on as Batman, building up to this Crisis on Infinite Earth story, and then deciding, no, that's going to be kind of dead on the water, so they restructured it. Or rather, actually, before that, all right, we're going to refocus, restructure, instead of just getting rid of everything. Yes, Keaton will come in as Batman, but we're also going to reestablish Henry Cavill as Superman, so we're going to change some stuff up. Okay, never mind, we're not doing that at all. Now we're just going to basically kill off the DCEU. We're starting from scratch. We're starting over. That was the issue, again, with the DCEU, and while I love elements of the DCEU, again, going back to this, the DCU just has this opportunity to do something different, to do something that even the MCU hasn't been able to do. It's pouring more into the comic book aspects of these characters, and not just the comic book aspects, but stuff that's been inspired and adapted from the comics. I'm thinking a lot of the DC animated universe, Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, Batman Beyond, all that kind of stuff. I can definitely see the inspiration that James Gunn is taking from that side of the DC universe, from the DC comics, stuff that's been adapted from DC. He's taking inspiration from Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, definitely definitely applying that to Superman. Other influences, I'm seeing Smallville, and just a quick sidebar on Superman and how that has kind of been perceived, how I perceived that film. At first, it was a little jarring when you got the Jor-El that was being portrayed by Bradley Cooper in this, and that he's actually telling Superman to be the conqueror of the Earth rather than its protector, rather than its savior. So you have that change, and I didn't like that at first. And I still am not crazy about that idea, but then you have inspirations like the show Smallville. And while the Jor-El on Smallville also isn't necessarily saying Clark go conquer Earth, but he wasn't the most kind father either. He was a pretty harsh character, at least at the beginning of the show and throughout a good portion of the show. That's how Clark perceived him, as this kind of just cruel overlord. And rather than relying on that part, his heritage in Smallville was completely linked, his upbringing was completely linked to Jonathan and Martha. And that's what we're pointed to in this Superman, is he kind of has that discovery of, what's my purpose as Superman? It's not my Kryptonian heritage, it's who my parents are, who they raised me to be. And so I can see those parallels of where James Gunn got his inspiration for how to portray this Superman. It's definitely heavily influenced by Christopher Reeve. I can even see elements from Henry Cavill's Superman, but I definitely get a lot of Smallville, a lot of Superman the Animated Series, and then the comics, of course, as well. There's a lot of these different influences that I can definitely see within this version of Superman. And again, I think it was a great first film for the DCU. Definitely establishes a lot of the DCU already. We don't have to do as much world building as the Marvel Cinematic Universe had to do with Iron Man. There's so much more world building that was done here, but it was also done effectively because it doesn't feel like it detracted from the story of Superman either. So I really liked that element of what James Gunn did with this. So the first couple projects of the DCU, we have all kind of created and shepherded by James Gunn. Of course, you have those loose projects. You have the Suicide Squad, you have Peacemaker seasons 1 and 2. Well, 2 is definitely a solid project in the DCU, but you had season 1. And then you had Creature Commando season 1. So you had Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, the Suicide Squad, and then this first movie in Superman, all shaped and directed by James Gunn. So you have that feel. Even Superman has that feel, that James Gunn vibe. Very Guardians of the Galaxy-esque in some instances. And I'm hoping going forward we'll start to see the different feel from each project as other creators get to tackle certain things. We, of course, have Supergirl coming up this year. While it's not directed by James Gunn, it's directed by Craig Gillespie. But Supergirl, from the trailers at least, feels very Guardians of the Galaxy. So it feels like a James Gunn property, even though he may not be the director or the one shepherding this specific project. We're gonna have to wait and see. I am excited to check it out. The trailers have been good. I don't think they've been great, but they've been good. They've been entertaining, so I'm looking forward to Supergirl. From what little we've seen of Millie Alcock as Supergirl, I'm looking forward to seeing what she's going to bring to the story, what she's going to bring to Kara Zor-El. So this more jaded version, this more jaded superhero, almost completely opposite to how Clark is, how Superman is. You see that difference, and especially in the marketing for Supergirl, they're going in that she's very different, how she views the world, how her worldview has been shaped. Very different from how Clark's upbringing and how his worldview was. I mean, she saw the destruction of her whole planet. She saw that destruction. Clark didn't have to witness that. He grew up on Earth. He didn't witness the destruction of Krypton, but, you know, Kara kind of did. So it's going to be interesting to see the dichotomy, the difference, the parallels maybe, and the distinct differences between the two characters. And I also love that this is the next follow-up. I mean, we have Peacemaker season 2 right after Superman, and definitely followed up on a lot of plot lines established in that movie, but also with Peacemaker season 1 and some other stuff. But as far as the second movie, I love that Supergirl is the next one. And she had her cameo in Superman. Krypto, of course, is another carryover character. Superman was kind of dog sitting, watching over Krypto. Krypto is Supergirl's dog, and he'll be a big part of Supergirl. He was a big standout and a fan favorite in Superman. I don't expect anything different in Supergirl. He's also going to be a standout character. So looking forward to this. Also love that Jason Momoa gets to stay on in the DC universe, no longer as Aquaman, but now gets to play the character that we all figured he would be perfect for in the DCEU. Better than even Aquaman, he's Lobo now. I mean, he looks like Lobo, and we see the few couple scenes from him in these trailers, he looks like Lobo. He sounds like Lobo, talks like it. This is like perfect casting. It's kind of casting I love, and for the most part is what James Gunn has kind of been going towards anyway, is a more comic accurate casting. There's still a few outliers, and sometimes you kind of roll your eyes on this, but then the actor surprises you and you're like, okay, I can forgive what I assumed here because the actor was able to pull off this role pretty well and actually was probably better than I could have thought of in the first place. But for the most part, I love the comic accurate casting. Cast what we think of the character in comics and media. That's what they did with David Corenswet as Superman. He's the perfect Superman. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. Those kind of castings, love that. And even getting that with shows like Lanterns, with Kyle Chandler as Green Lantern and Aaron Pierre as John Stewart. I love all these castings that I've been seeing. But going back to Supergirl, just really excited for this film. I mean, I'm not as excited as I am for it as I was for Superman, but I'm just loving the DCU so far. I mean, I'm not on the highs that I was with the MCU back in like the phase 1, 2, and 3 days. I'm just excited for the potential of where the DCU has to go. Don't discount the DCU. We're still in just year 2, basically, of the DCU. Early stages, that we still have a lot to experience. There's a lot left to unpack and discover, a lot more characters to come in the future. So I'm really excited to see what we may get with Supergirl and these other projects down the line. So we have Supergirl coming out this year, and then let's move on to the next project that's coming out, and it's Lanterns. I teased it a little bit, but it's Lanterns. That's the next project after Supergirl. I believe originally it was supposed to be released before. We're getting it after. I'm really excited for this show. Am I excited about the look of the characters, like the Green Lantern suit? We just had that second teaser recently. No, I'm not crazy about the look of the Green Lantern suits, but maybe it'll be improved when we finally see the final product. There's still a few months until this thing comes out. They might have some time to tweak the suit, make it look a little bit better, a little bit more appeasing, but I mean, what the suit looks like at the end of the day is not going to make or break my love of this show. I think it's got the potential to be something really interesting, something a little bit more impactful, and something more grounded, which is odd to say for a Green Lantern show. I know we're going to get intergalactic. The trailers, the second trailer showed us as much, that we are going to go into space in some instances. But I'm really curious as far as their portrayal of Hal Jordan. He's this veteran, almost like Top Gun Maverick type of character. He is a little jaded, but it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the back and forth and the pairing between Hal Jordan and John Stewart. I'm curious on the project. It's definitely been one of my most anticipated of the entire DC universe. I think when I was originally ranking all these new projects coming out, Lanterns was like in my top 3, I believe. I don't remember. I'll have to go back to those videos, but it was number 3 or number 2 for me, I think. I think I ranked Superman at number 1. I may have ranked Lanterns at number 1. I'm not sure, so let's get past that. But I've always been a huge fan of the Green Lantern character. I've always been wanting them to do more with these characters. Back in the DCEU days, we were supposed to get a Green Lantern Corps movie set for 2020 that never came out. Like most of the DCEU projects that were slated for the future never happened. But we were supposed to get this Green Lantern Corps film that I believe was also going to star Hal Jordan and John Stewart. So we're getting elements of that. We've already got the Green Lantern kind of established here with Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner and Superman. He, of course, made another appearance in Peacemaker Season 2, and Guy Gardner is also supposed to be featured, at least in a small capacity, in the Lantern series. So we have a bit of touchstone with the Green Lantern character in this series. I'm curious to unpack this. I can't wait to unpack it and to finally get something that isn't exactly like the Green Lantern movie starring Ryan Reynolds. I don't hate that movie like a lot of people do, but I don't love it either. It's just kind of there. A lot of potential for that film, but it never got to the heights that we all wanted it to be. So I'm really excited for Lanterns because it's a property that I hated that it was slept on for so long and wasn't even given the chance because of a bad movie. I hate that Hollywood does that, where there's something that you know can be really great, but because of one flop, they're so gun shy to try to do it again. And Lanterns has the opportunity to show everybody that these characters can be really cool if handled right. And I think Lanterns has the opportunity to handle it right. I'm hoping for some longer episodes, not the Peacemaker length episodes, but like the Penguin, some good 45, 55-minute episodes, maybe hour-long episodes in some instances. And I'm really intrigued by the different timelines. Part of the show is going to be set in 2016, while the rest of the show is set in 2026. So there's going to be this back and forth in timelines, kind of establishing where the Green Lanterns were prior to the events of Superman. So much of this DC universe took place before the first Superman movie, or Creature Commandos, or these loose DCEU projects. There's this rich history that exists that I can't wait for James Gunn and the rest of the company at DC Studios to tackle. I can't wait for a Justice Society movie set in either World War I or like the 1930s or whatever. I can't wait for these interesting, different projects that weren't possible under the old regime that I know James Gunn is going to give some opportunity to. He's going to allow these weird offshoot projects that may not even be super niche, but just haven't been given the light of day, haven't been given a chance to shine in the past. And now they will be able to. And oddly, the Green Lanterns haven't been given a chance to shine when they're one of the core pillars of DC Comics. And I've loved them in the animated movies that have come out, the video games, and all these other properties. But as far as on the big screen or on TV, just haven't been given the chance in the live action sense, at least. Haven't been given the chance until now, so I'm really excited for Lanterns. Out of all the DC projects coming out this year, Lanterns is my most anticipated project. Then we got another odd project, Clayface. Clayface is going to be this body horror film set for October. We've already got a teaser for it. I'm curious about it. I can't believe I'm saying I'm excited for it, but I'm actually excited for it. I can't wait to check it out. It is weird that we're getting Clayface before we're even getting Batman in this universe. We've got Robert Pattinson's Batman, but he's not the DCU Batman. I don't believe they're going to change the direction with his character. I don't believe he's going to suddenly become the DCU Batman. I don't think they're changing the trajectory of Robert Pattinson's character. I believe there will be a new Batman cast for the DC universe that we'll get in the Brave and the Bold film, whether that film is directed by Andy Muschietti or somebody else. At this point, I think somebody else is going to direct that movie, but it is weird that we're getting Clayface before we're getting Batman. Maybe Batman will be subtly introduced. We already got Batman kind of introduced in the DCU in Creature Commandos. He was just off in the shadows when Dr. Phosphorus was taken in. He was taken in by Batman. He was defeated by Batman. We got the shadowy figure. We don't have an actor for Bruce Wayne, but we know Bruce Wayne as Batman does exist in this universe. We just haven't seen him yet, and it is weird that we're getting Clayface of all things before Batman. Like, we're not even getting like a Jim Gordon series. Like, I think Jim Gordon as a property, that would make more sense, or just a GCPD movie would make more sense than doing a Clayface movie. But we're getting Clayface. I mean, an Alfred project would make more sense to me than Clayface. But again, we're getting Clayface. There's a lot of faith in this project. The teaser has me really curious, really interested. So I don't usually go for the horror type films. I'm not a big horror fan, especially body horror, really not my thing. But it's Clayface, it's DC, so I'm going to check it out. I have nothing but hope for this. Maybe it's going to be like a Joker type experience for us. Joker 1, not Joker 2. Although I'm kind of a defender of Joker Folie à Deux, but that's a topic for another time. I am looking forward to Clayface just because it's so weird, it's so out there, but as far as everything that came out from CinemaCon for this project, people who've been able to kind of see some stuff from Clayface, any kind of talk that's come out about this movie, it's got me interested and it's got me intrigued, and it's oddly my second most anticipated DC project. Supergirl's number 3. Supergirl I am still excited for. I'm eager to check it out. So just because it's number 3, just because it's the last one on here, doesn't mean that I'm not looking forward to Supergirl. But it is oddly, I wouldn't think this, but it's my third most anticipated out of the 3 big DCU things coming out this year. It's Lanterns, then Clayface, and then Supergirl. So it's weird. I'm curious about it. I have no idea what to expect from this Clayface movie other than they've described it as a body horror experience. Not what I thought they would have done if I was creating the new DC universe. It's not one of the early projects I would have greenlit, but it did get greenlit. So we got that to look forward to in October. That's the stuff that we've got for this year. I talked about what we already got in the DC universe with Creature Commandos, with Superman, Peacemaker. I didn't really talk about Peacemaker too much, so I'll go ahead and touch on Peacemaker. I have seen season 1. I enjoyed season 1. I talked about that a little bit. I didn't talk about season 2 because I haven't seen season 2 yet, and I'm going to explain why. Right now, I'm actually trying to catch up on so much DC material that I haven't seen in the past. So we're going to kind of segue here. I've never seen Smallville up until last year. never watched it. And so now I'm currently on season 7 of Smallville. I'm trying to kind of what I'm doing with the MCU and how to restructure it. I'm trying to do that with DC because I can clearly see where a lot of the foundation of the DC universe has not begun in the films, but if you track it to shows like Arrow or Smallville, the core essence of this DC universe they're creating kind of starts with these shows like Smallville, like Arrow, like The Flash, and I'm going to do a video on that later, and I hope you guys will be there for it. I hope you'll enjoy it. But I never watched Smallville. I didn't grow up as a fan of Smallville, and my first big foray into DC TV was with the Arrowverse, was with Arrow, was with The Flash, and I know that those shows really only exist because of Smallville, but I never got around to watching Smallville for one reason or another. Just I wasn't excited to watch them. I don't know why. I mean, I was intrigued. I had seen clips, but the only thing I'd ever seen Tom Welling in prior to Smallville was the Cheaper by the Dozen movies with Steve Martin. But other than that, I never checked out Smallville, and the first time I was exposed to him as Clark Kent was in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover they did in 2019 and 2020 for the Arrowverse. And so I never got on the Smallville train up until recently because I decided I'm going to do this kind of watch through of the Arrowverse and all the offshoots of that early stage of the multiverse that they created on those shows. Smallville is one of the Earths that was established in this DC multiverse in the Arrowverse days. So because I was watching through all these shows, Smallville was on my list to check out. And I'm loving this. I think after watching Smallville, Tom Welling is my favorite Clark Kent. Michael Rosenbaum is now my favorite Lex Luthor. And then you have other greats. My favorite Jonathan Kent is John Schneider. My favorite Martha Kent is Annette O'Toole. You have these great characters that are brought to life by these great actors. It's a show I never gave myself a chance to watch until recently. I'm glad I finally did because it's such a pleasure. It's such a gem to watch. It's heartfelt. It has great messaging. Yeah, it does have the villain of the week or the freak of the week as they like to call it sometimes. It has that element to it. I mean, these are 22 episode seasons, so sometimes you have to fill them out with a little bit of filler. The writers were in crunch sometimes, had to make these episodes quick and snappy. And then I'm just going into the history. I've learned so much about how Smallville was created, the process behind which that show came to be, off of the podcast Talkville starring Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum. They have a podcast they're actually doing right now. They're on season 8 of Smallville. I'm pretty behind on that podcast. I've only gotten up to season 3 on the Talkville podcast. Their conversations, there's so much that's unraveled about how Smallville came to be, how their experience was on set, what they did episode to episode. Sometimes they'll remember what they did, sometimes they won't, but it's just a great insight into how this show happened. And Smallville, as it is, it was a record breaker for the CW or the WB at the time. It was like one of the top shows, if not the top show. I might be mistaken there, but it did great numbers for that network, and it established so much for what DC TV would be for at least the next 10, 20 years. From 2001, when Smallville started, to the end of Superman and Lois recently, that is the span of which we got this version of DC television. And all of the shows that came after, Arrow, Flash, Black Lightning, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, Superman and Lois, these shows owe so much to what Smallville did. And, they're resting on the shoulders of Smallville. Just going back to the show has been so fun. There's times when I can kind of nitpick and be like, it's a little cringy. The early seasons are like high school teen drama that I'm not crazy about, but I'm also kind of fascinated with because it's in that early 2000s era. So it's fun to hear the music because I grew up in the early 2000s. So not in high school. I wasn't in high school until the early 20-teens, but my childhood, I grew up in the early 2000s. I was a 90s kid, sort of, born in 97, so I didn't experience the 90s, but I experienced the early 2000s. It's so fun hearing the music that I was familiar with in that era, the way that kids dress, act, at least the way they were portrayed on TV. It's been fun to kind of have this blast to the past, to my past. So it's been fun to watch this. Of course, it's really hilarious when you have 20-year-olds playing teenagers, but that's just that's how it worked, or at least back then, that's how it worked. It's a gem of a show that wouldn't be made today just because television television as it stands today is so different from how it used to be. It's this time capsule. The show is kind of this time capsule. It's just a great representation of Superman, the Superman lore, everything dealing with his past with Krypton and who he is, who he's expected to be by both Jonathan Kent and Martha. And I'm speaking about Clark Kent, but who he's expected to be by all these people. Everybody has expectations for Clark. And so it's a show about identity. Who are you? That's what the show does so well, because it's not about what can we do to Clark Kent. He's basically invulnerable except for like kryptonite, but he has all these different emotions. You know, he wishes he was more like everybody else, but he has to be so different. It's a story about the outsider. It's a story about individuality and identity, who you are as you grow into the adult, the person that you're going to be. And that's what I love about this show. And it's so earnest in its portrayal of Clark's journey to eventually become Superman. He's so hesitant to it, and that's such an odd idea. Something I've kind of was foreign to me when I went into Smallville was that, you know, I'm used to these portrayals of, Henry Cavill Superman kind of did this, of I don't know if this is who I'm supposed to be. It kind of dealt with that identity, but then he just jumps into it and he's Superman. Of course, we had the Christopher Reeve story that you don't really spend a lot of time with him dealing with his Kryptonian heritage. He just kind of becomes Superman, and that's who he is. And I love Christopher Reeve in the role, but we never had that development of him questioning whether or not this is who he wants to be, if this is who he should be. And it's kind of a with great power comes great responsibility story, but you get that with Superman. I love that portrayal, what they did here with Smallville. So I'm still going through Smallville. I'm in season 7, and I've still got 3 more seasons after season 7 to watch. There's 10 seasons total. So I'm excited to get into more of Smallville. I've seen so much of it already, but there's still so much left for me to watch too and experience. So I went on a tangent there just talking about my new experience with Smallville. But that to say, that's why I haven't seen Peacemaker season 2, is because I've been dedicating my DC TV watch to watching Smallville. So I will get to Peacemaker season 2. My plan is to watch it before I go see Supergirl. So I will watch it and then maybe talk about it on the channel after I've seen it. That's why I didn't talk too much about Peacemaker season 2. I know a lot about the season. I pretty much know how the show goes for the most part. I've heard a decent amount of stuff, so there will still be some surprises for me. I enjoyed Peacemaker season 1, so I do expect to enjoy the second season. I've heard some pretty good things about it. Some mixed things. I heard it's not as good as the first season, but I still heard it's very enjoyable. So looking forward to checking that out. It was nice to see Peacemaker show up in Superman for a cameo, so I look forward to seeing what the rest of the show has in store for the character. Now that I've backtracked a little bit and I've talked about what we're getting in 2026, let's go to 2027. Sidebar from the DCU, but we do have an Elseworlds property coming out in the Batman Part 2. Man, it is about time that we get the Batman Part 2. We got the Batman in 2022, and that first movie was delayed several times as well. It was supposed to come out in 2021, I believe, but we didn't get it until 2022. And that movie was very enjoyable. It's basically Seven, and this rhetoric is already talked about all over the internet, but it's the crime drama Seven starring Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt. It's that movie, but Batman. It works so well for Batman. Now, can I say that I absolutely love everything that Robert Pattinson is doing with the character Batman? No, he still has a lot of room to grow. Usually on a first outing for a Batman character, for a new Batman actor, I do actually happen to love their first outing. Christian Bale, I was automatically on board with what he did in Batman Begins. Ben Affleck, you say what you want about BVS, but I was on board for what he was doing as the character of Batman in Batman vs. Superman. Was I on board with him abandoning his no-kill rule? No, I'm a purist on that Batman needs to have that rule about him, so that rubbed me the wrong way. But I was on board with the portrayal, what Ben Affleck did with that version of the character. And Michael Keaton was on board with what he did in the Batman. I have some issues with Batman Returns. I may talk about that later on the channel, but him as Batman, I enjoyed. I even liked Val Kilmer in the role of Batman. And George Clooney, I may not have loved what he did as Batman. He was a good Bruce Wayne, but I didn't really love what he did as Batman. And then it was hilarious to see George Clooney return at the end of The Flash. I've always, for the most part, enjoyed the original first outing for these new Batman actors. For Robert Pattinson's portrayal in The Batman, I liked it, but I didn't love it. But I didn't hate it either. I think he has a lot of potential and a lot of room to grow. And I think at the end of The Batman, you do get that. He's kind of been hesitant to be both Bruce Wayne and Batman, thinking that Bruce Wayne has nothing to offer Gotham. His only role, his only thing he can offer is being the vigilante and being Vengeance. He's not even really adopting the name of Batman. He's just known as Vengeance. And it's not until the end of the movie that he becomes Batman. And then I think that he also realizes that he can use the identity of Bruce Wayne to his benefit. He can do something with this character. That is what I'm really looking forward to in the Batman Part 2. So I still love that Robert Pattinson was cast as this character. I think that this character just has a lot more room to grow and develop. So I'm looking forward to that. Love Andy Serkis as Alfred. I think that was a great pairing for the two of them. And so just going back to how I viewed the first film, I have a few issues with how the character of Batman was developed, but I think now we're going to finally get that version that I was hoping for in the first movie. But the rest of it, I love the crime drama feel of it. I love all of the supporting cast and characters. Colin Farrell as the Penguin was like you cast who as the Penguin, and then he just disappears into this role. I don't even see Colin Farrell in that. And then he had his own show, and I still didn't even see Colin Farrell. I just saw the Penguin. This was like a different actor cast in this role, and I love what he brought to it. Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, not who I would have initially thought of to be a Jim Gordon, but he was great in the role. And I love the back and forth, the chemistry that he had with Robert Pattinson's Batman. He was reluctant to partner with Batman, but knows that he has to because of the corruption within the GCPD and the Gotham City government. That it's just kind of a necessary evil that he has to partner with this vigilante that's outside of the law, but is gonna be the guy whose really only hope for Gotham is in Batman. I just love what Matt Reeves crafted here. A very, maybe more real universe of Batman than what Christopher Nolan did. Christopher Nolan's Batman was supposed to be the Batman that lived in the real world, but I think they stripped that back even more with Robert Pattinson's Batman. So just looking forward to seeing what we have going forward into the Batman Part 2. Looks like we might be getting Sebastian Stan as Harvey Dent and Scarlett Johansson as his wife Gilda Dent. So we're going to have another Two-Face story, and it's funny that it happens in the second movie like it did in The Dark Knight. We had Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent / Two-Face in The Dark Knight. Looking forward to maybe him being the primary villain instead of the secondary villain, because Harvey Dent was essentially overshadowed by Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight, and for good reason. I mean, great portrayal, wonderful portrayal of that character. But with the Batman, Harvey Dent might have a chance to really stand out here. So I'm curious about what this movie is going to be. I don't know what this movie is going to be, but I'm glad it's finally happening. It's been delayed time and time and time again. It was supposed to come out last year alongside Superman. That didn't happen. It was pushed this year. Didn't happen. It's coming out next year. I believe it is finally coming out next year because they are actually casting. They're about to start filming. They're going into all that stuff. So I do believe that it will finally hit theaters next year. So excited for that movie. That is my most anticipated DC project for next year. But along with that, we have Man of Tomorrow, the sequel to Superman. So excited for this movie, and I can't wait to check it out. I mean, Superman, I don't love, but I don't hate. I do like it a lot. There's a lot of potential in this Superman movie and what David Cornsweet's doing with this character. So I can't wait to see it. And it looks like he's going to have to be partnered up with Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor. So after Lex went into prison, I think they're going to have to go to this guy to face off against the ultimate villain of the movie, which is going to be Brainiac. And so how are they going to defeat Brainiac? It looks like this movie, much like Superman, is going to have these other supporting superheroes and comic book characters, because when a villain like Brainiac comes into the picture, do you just rely on one superhero? No, you got to rely on all these other characters. I believe it's going to be Superman. I believe Supergirl is going to be in there. We've already been told that Aaron Pierre's Jon Stewart's supposed to be in this. I believe also paired with Guy Gardner, probably, depending on what happens in him in the Lantern series. Will Hal Jordan be there? I don't know. I don't really see Hal Jordan continuing on as a Green Lantern past the Lantern series, but we'll see. And then, of course, you got Lex Luthor who's going to have to be part of this. I believe Mr. Terrific's probably going to be there, Metamorpho, Hawkgirl, all these other characters. So it's going to be like this Justice League light that we got in Superman that we're going to get again in the Man of Tomorrow. So are these Superman movies just supposed to be like mini team-up films, but still focusing on Superman at the core? Maybe, and I'm okay with that for now, especially for what I think the story's going to be. And I'm so glad we're finally getting Brainiac as the villain. I think we were going to get that in Man of Steel 2. Originally, they were going to finally be pushing this. I think Christopher McQuarrie from the Mission Impossible series, I think he was going to be up for directing Man of Steel 2 when Henry Cavill had announced after Black Adam came out that he was going to come back as Superman. I think this is what they were playing with. And I think Brainiac was going to be the ultimate villain. And that project just got shut down. And I believe in the past that's happened multiple times with the character Brainiac. Got so close, but never happened. And I think James Gunn almost did that with the first Superman. If I'm remembering correctly, Brainiac was going to be, if not the main villain, one of the supporting villains in Superman. And so they're finally using this character in Man of Tomorrow. And if they do what I think they're going to do in the Supergirl movie, that'll be a great way to set up Brainiac for him to then continue on into Man of Tomorrow. If they go with what the comics did in some instances with the Brainiac character in Supergirl, having those two characters carry over into the next film, there's already a rich history and background with those two characters. I'm hoping they pull on that and use that in the next couple films. So looking forward to that. There's so much potential for Man of Tomorrow. And I just love that we're getting a follow-up to this movie so quickly. Something the DCEU didn't do. Yeah, you could say, okay, they did a pretty decent turnaround with, at least as far as the time frame goes, from Man of Steel, and then you got BVS. So there was a continuation with the Superman character, with Henry Cavill's Superman. This feels like a more true sequel to what the Superman movie was. So I think we're getting a truer sequel than what BVS was to Man of Steel. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I love that it sounds like when these projects get done, they're going to be looking for, where can we put this character next? If the audience loves these characters, if they're received well, they're not just going to sit on their hands and be like, okay, well, what do we do now? That's what happened with Ben Affleck's Batman. That's what happened with so many characters in the DCEU is, okay, we established this character. Now, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll do something with this character. It's not just DC. Star Wars is having the same trouble with establishing these characters and then not building upon any momentum. And so that's what the DCU has the opportunity to do here. Use the momentum and then make us excited for these characters. So really excited for Man of Tomorrow. So those are the projects I know are confirmed. There's other projects that have been talked about. Deathstroke and Bane is one. They're working on a Booster Gold show. Paradise Lost is a TV show they're working on. A Wonder Woman movie, which I think Wonder Woman will be set up in Man of Tomorrow. We'll see. I also believe that Martian Manhunter will be another character set up in Man of Tomorrow. So we have these other heroes that are slowly being built up. We got Brave and the Bold, of course, that new Batman movie that I guess I'm looking forward to. Right now, my eyes are on the Batman Part 2 because I don't really know. I know next to nothing about this DCU Batman. I have my picks for who I want the new Batman to be, what actor I want them to be. I actually have one top pick, and for me, that's going to be Brendan Sklenar. He is known to me for playing Spencer Dutton in the 1923 Yellowstone series. He also recently had a few film appearances in the suspense thriller Drop. He was also in The Housemaid recently with Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried. So he's an actor that I've got my eye on for Batman, and I'm hoping they end up casting him as Batman. He's got the stature, he's got the build, and from what I saw of him in 1923, I know he can kill it as Bruce Wayne, and there's some darkness in what he can portray too, so I think he can be a really great Batman as well. I'm hoping he's who's cast as Batman, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think he would be a perfect casting and a perfect pairing to go opposite of David Cornsweet's Superman as well. So there's these other projects that are coming down the line. I don't really have a way to predict what the DCU will be, especially because we keep getting these weird offshoot projects like Clayface, Creature Commandos. There's these other things I wouldn't expect from a brand new DC universe, but there's so much potential for what they could do. I talked about a Justice Society project that I would love to see in the near future maybe, or a Flash film. What I would love from the Flash, I'm going to go ahead and go into the Flash here. They're not really talking about the Flash. I think after the Flash movie, I'm a defender of that movie. I'm not a defender of the actor. I'm not a fan of Ezra Miller, and Ezra Miller is in large part why that movie didn't do so well. Ezra's conduct in the public eye wasn't the greatest, so it kind of tanked the marketing for that movie. They really weren't able to push that movie in the way that Warner Brothers wanted to. But I had fun with it, especially the return of Michael Keaton as Batman, and just this version of the Flashpoint storyline. Not what I would have done with the DCEU Flashpoint. There was so much potential with Jeffrey D. Morgan's Thomas Wayne as Batman. Could have been a great character to put in here. Having Jason Momoa as Aquaman fight Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. Having these elements perfectly set up by Zack Snyder in the previous films. They could have done that with a Flashpoint film. They didn't do that, but I did enjoy what they gave us with The Flash at the end of the day. It was enjoyable, but with the Flash character in the DCU, my hope is that they do like a legacy thing. They're doing a lot of legacy establishment stuff with, especially with what we're seeing with the Green Lantern series right now. And I think they're going to do that again with The Flash, because I believe Wally West is going to be our primary Flash in the DCU. I think we're going to follow his story. And who would I pick to play Barry Allen in The Flash? Kind of this passing of the torch. somebody who we would already believe is Barry Allen, but maybe somebody playing this character who doesn't want to stick around forever. My pick is Grant Gustin. Grant Gustin, who played Barry Allen in the CW Arrowverse Flash series. He would be perfect, and James Gunn has already shown with his carryovers from the DCEU into the DCU, there could be carryover in actors, and maybe their background, their backstory is a little different, but they could still be played by the same person. And I think for Barry Allen, if you're not meant to see him as the main Flash going forward, maybe we're going to do a passing of the torch scenario. He's like Flash for this one movie, and then we pass that off to Wally West at the end of the film and establish that Barry Allen's been Flash for quite a while. Make it Grant Gustin's Barry Allen. That would be so fun, and would finally, I think, maybe forgive the horrible mistake they did in not including his Flash in the Flash movie. A movie that deals with the multiverse, and you don't include Grant Gustin as the Flash. That was a huge slap in the face, and I think that this would be a great way to make up for that mistake, and I think it'd be so cool. Originally, I wasn't on board with, bringing over actors who had been in these roles before, but I think with the Flash, it would be a nice exception to make to that rule, is carry him over from those shows, change his backstory a little bit, but also try to make it maybe a little similar. I would like to see other characters, maybe other actors in small supporting roles. If you ever do like Killer Frost, maybe make it Danielle Panabaker, bring her back as Caitlin Snow. Little touches like that would be really nice, and I think would be really fun. If they ever do Jay Garrick on The Flash, my pick initially has been Michael Douglas. I think he'd be a really good Jay Garrick, but I wouldn't be opposed to having that be John Wesley Shipp again. I think that would be really cool and really fun. I would go for Grant Gustin to be the Flash for this one movie, and then pass that off to whoever would be cast as the Wally West of the DC universe. That's just been the big thing on my mind as far as like my hope for a project. It's really been the only project on my mind as far as what I want to see, and I don't really have a concept for what I want out of a Flash movie. I don't want it to be a Flashpoint story. I don't want it to be a big time travel thing. I mean, it could be, I guess it could be in some aspects, but it doesn't have to be. We've already done that with the Flash movie. I think we need to do something a little different with this new one, but there's so much potential for this new DC universe. There's been some projects they've announced that were going to happen that aren't going to happen anymore, like The Authority. I think it's just too similar to The Boys and probably doesn't work out very well in the current landscape of the DC universe. It could work in the future, but I think right now it just doesn't fit, and that's kind of what James Gunn was alluding to recently, is that's kind of why that project's not moving forward. There's other projects like Sergeant Rock that almost happened, were really close to happening, and then just didn't happen. Originally with Daniel Craig in the role, and then it went to Colin Farrell in the role, and then the project just ultimately fell apart. I don't see that project happening anytime soon. I don't think it's dead on arrival. I mean, I don't think that project's absolutely dead. I just don't think we're going to be seeing it anytime soon. Other projects, the Waller series was talked about in that initial pitch for the DC Universe, that first video that James Gunn did. That might be happening, but I think that project is changing subtly. It could still be a Waller-focused series, an Amanda Waller-focused series. I would like to see it. I don't know if we will. It might be folded into either a Checkmate series, I guess was teased at the end of Peacemaker Season 2, one of the few things I know about Peacemaker Season 2, or maybe Peacemaker Season 3. They might just make a Peacemaker Season 3, and that will be what the Waller show was originally going to be. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. And then again, these other projects that have been teased, talked about, there's a Teen Titans project that I'm really excited for. I love the Teen Titans group, so I don't know if they call it Teen Titans or just call it Titans, but I'm really looking forward to what they might have for us with these other projects. In the future, the DCU is just so bright. There's so much potential for what they could do here. A full-fledged DC universe that we've never had before. I'm so excited for this. There's so much potential. Have all the projects that have come out so far been amazing or top tier? They've been really good. I've at least enjoyed all the projects they've given us. I haven't been like jumping up for joy for all of them, but I have at the very least liked them. And I think there's so much potential for what the DC universe could grow into. So I'm so excited and looking forward to all of that. All of my rambling out of the way about the DC universe, the state of the DC universe, what I'm excited to see, what we have seen, all that stuff out of the way. Thanks so much for checking out this video, this new series I'm starting here that will be intercut with the releases of the episodes for the Assembly Cut, the new podcast I'm doing with Hayden Smalley. Hope you guys join us over there for that podcast. When we don't do the podcast, when we don't have a chance to meet up and talk with each other, I'll be doing this right here and talking one-on-one with all of you. So thank you guys for joining me here. Go down in the comment section, let me know what you thought of all of these projects and what I talked about here on the channel. Would love to hear from you. Before you go, remember to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos go live to this channel. When you guys do that, it always helps me out. I greatly appreciate it. Hope you all have an awesome and a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.